All right. I can't believe that took so long. Thanks, Lucas. All right, so I think we're recording and we've got slides, so we're okay. So this doesn't happen in every lecture. It's actually relatively rare, but I guess start of a new semester, there's a few systems changes, so something's gone wrong there. Anyway, my name is Robert Clark. I'm an academic in this school, the Research School of Finance, Actuarial Studies and Statistics. I'm a statistics academic, and I'm also the convener of the degrees that you're here to hear about. So the Master of Statistics and Master of Actuarial Studies and Actuarial Practice, and also the Graduate Certificate of Finance and Applied Statistics. Or Finance and Actuarial Statistics, I should say. So those are the degrees up there. Privacy notice, this event will be live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available later. You can ask questions or make comments via the chat function, or if you're here in person, just put your hand up, or you can use the chat function if you like. If you decide you don't want to be in the recording and you've talked to the chat function, then contact that email afterwards or email me. So you can email me with a comment, or you can email CBE afterwards if you decide you don't want your voice on the recording. So I'll first of all talk about the Actuarial Masters program. So we had one person from Master of Actuarial Practice, didn't we? Or two, sorry. So there are two Actuarial Master's degrees. The first one is Master of Actuarial Practice, which is 2.5 years. Second one is Master of Actuarial Statistics, which is 2 years. So you might ask, why would you do the longer degree? Well, the reason is that you can get some further Actuarial Institute exemptions. So I'll talk a little bit more about the Actuarial Institute and what that means in a few slides. But these are accreditations with Australia's National Actuarial Institute. If you do the Master of Actuarial Studies, you can get exemptions for some of what they call their foundation program qualifications and some of their associate program qualifications. If you do the Master of Actuarial Practice, you get all of the foundation program, and you also get some of the associate program exemptions. Also, the other difference is that because of the prerequisite requirements that they feed into each other and so on, you can only start the Master of Actuarial Studies in first semester. Otherwise, you'd end up with awkward gaps where you couldn't study, or you couldn't do a full load for some semesters. So because of that, we don't allow students to start it in second semester, so a Master of Actuarial Studies must be started in first semester. Master of Actuarial Practice, because it's a longer degree, there's a little bit more flexibility to move things around, and so you can start that in either semester. There's exceptions to every rule. If you've got a large number of recognised credits and exemptions for prior study, equivalent to courses in these degrees, occasionally an exception can be made to that rule, but it almost never occurs. It's almost never possible unless you've done your undergraduate degree here and it's a Bachelor of Actuarial Studies. Otherwise, there's not usually enough credit that is possible to make it feasible to start that Master of Actuarial Studies in second semester. If you think you might be in this position but you're not sure, send me an email. The sorts of things that you study in an Actuarial Master's program, you do quite a lot of statistics. So I'd say probably more than half the degree is stat-coded courses. So these include subjects like survival analysis, principles of mathematical statistics for actuaries, regression for actuaries, and introduction to stochastic processes. You'll also do a smaller number of actuarial courses. So they're coded as ACST for actuarial courses. And these include actuarial data analysis and actuarial control cycle. You'll definitely do at least some finance courses, possibly quite a lot, depending on which degree you're doing and your interests. And this includes continuous time finance, applied corporate finance, and applied investments. If you're interested in fitting some research into your degree, there is potential in the final year of the degree to do research essay in actuarial studies. So that's a course of either 6 or 12 units. So it's equivalent to 1 or 2 standard courses where you would do a small research project or a medium-sized research project if it's 12 credit points or 12 units in a topic that you negotiate with a supervisor. There's some requirements to do that. So there's a GPA cutoff And there's also a requirement you have to find a supervisor who's available and willing to supervise the research essay. So occasionally that's difficult if you want to work in a particular area or key academics are away. We can't always support the research essay. There is also in the degree a thesis course, so you can do a larger project built into a master's thesis. That depends a bit on the particular student situation, whether that's possible or not. So if you don't have any related prior study, so you can't get any credit or exemption for your prior study, it's often difficult or impossible to fit in a full-size thesis into the degree. But if you have some credit for some prior study, then you can fit in a larger thesis. Being an actuary, so I'm not an actuary, I'm a statistician, so there's some overlap in our domain of knowledge, but they're not quite the same. But to be an actuary, you need to be good at mathematics, have an interest in statistics, be interested in finance, and also want to apply your skills to real-world financial and insurance sector problems. So if you're good at statistics or interested in statistics, but you've got no interest in the world of finance and insurance, well, actuary probably doesn't line up with your motivations. So you really have to be good at the quantitative stuff, good at maths, theory and maths applied and computing and so on, but also want to apply that knowledge to real world problems in business and finance and insurance. To qualify as an actuary in Australia, the Actuaries Institute, which I'll just sometimes call the Institute, is the professional body for actuaries in Australia. So they regulate training, qualifications, continuing professional development, professional standards, code of conduct, and so on for actuaries in Australia. To be an associate of the Institute, there's several ways to do it. So one way is to there's not several ways. You have to do the foundation program and the associate program and the 1-year work experience. To become a fellow of the Institute, you have to meet those associate requirements. And then on top of that, you have to do a fellowship program and a 1 additional year work experience. So these are things you can look at the Institute of Actuaries website if you want to find out more information about. If you just Google Australian Institute of Actuaries, it'll come up as the top hit. In order to get these qualifications, so for the foundation program, this can be done by either 6 subjects, university subjects, studied at an accredited university. So that's one way, and that's the route that you might take if you're doing a master's degree here. So we've got various of our courses are recognised and accredited by the Institute. And if you complete those courses with a good enough grade, then you'll receive exemption for those qualifications, and so you'll be eligible to receive those qualifications from the Institute. The other option is that you can do exams by the Institute. So you can qualify as an actuary without doing any university study. What you'll do is a series of exams. So for the foundation program, you'll do 6 exams. The exams are very substantial, as you'd imagine, and so each exam is really the equivalent of studying a full university subject. And you have to, there's a payment involved and a registration process with the Institute and so on. But if you do study instead at an accredited university, you can achieve these exemptions without having to do the actuary exams. And you can also do the exams in the UK. So the Australian qualifications are, line up with the UK corresponding qualifications. To get to the associate program, you need to do a further 2 subjects at an accredited university. Plus, you have to do another 2 subjects that you have to do through the Institute, not through ANU. For the fellowship program, there are 3 modules available through the Institute for actually getting those qualifications that way. A very important document if you're doing an actuarial master's degree or actuarial undergraduate degree is to look at this website. And this tells you what are the ANU courses that line up with the Actuarial Institute qualifications. And it also tells you the grade cutoffs. So there's a requirement on the grade you achieve for each of the courses contributing to an exemption. And also if there's multiple courses contributing to one exemption, you need to achieve a certain average grade for that set of courses. So this is all clearly described on that website, so I won't try to go through that detail here, but you should go on that website and have a look. And you should be aware that those cutoffs for the required grade are higher than the passing grade. So passing the course here isn't enough to get you the actuarial exemption, the institute exemption. You need to achieve it with a high enough grade in order to meet the cutoffs that are described on that website. If you pass the course at ANU, but you don't get a high enough grade to get the institute exemption, you can still continue with your study at ANU. You'll still get your degree at the end. Passing is the cutoff for that, but you won't achieve those actuarial exemptions, and you won't have a way of achieving those particular exemptions through ANU study if your grade passes but falls short of their cutoff. You can still do it in the future by doing the exam with them, but you need to be aware of those grades because that's probably what you're going to be aiming for in your courses. I've got here a Master of Actuarial Practice study plan. This is for students who start the Master of Actuarial Practice in semester 1. I'm not going to go through this whole plan. The main thing with this session is to draw your attention to the fact that this plan exists. There's a link down the bottom where you can find the this plan online. If you go to current students program planning study plans, you'll see the whole list of ANU degrees where there is a study plan there. And you'll see the Master of Statistics and the Master of Actuarial Studies are all listed there as well. And you can go and see this plan. So key things are the first semester, really of all of the master's degrees I'm going to talk about. Well, sorry, the actuarial master's degrees start with Stat 6013 and 6014. That's our introductory first statistics courses in these degrees. So that's principles of mathematical statistics and regression modeling. And they're then prerequisites for the statistics courses that follow after. There's also in that first semester, in this case, I'm starting in semester 1, Stat 6046, which is financial mathematics, and a finance course as well. So you can see this spreads over 2.5 years. I'm going to put up a link later to the programs and courses page for the degree. The programs and courses page is what describes the rules for the degree. So the list of courses that you're allowed to take during the degree and the courses that are compulsory. And there's also a set of courses that you have to take that list a minimum amount from that list of courses. So in terms of what's actually a requirement of finishing the degree, that's described on that programs and courses page. These study plans are examples of ways that you can plan your study that will meet those requirements, give you your degree. But it's not the only way. So there's other courses you can do here. So for example, it's not compulsory to do FinM 7006, Foundations of Finance. You could do a different course. Is that true? Anyway, there are some courses here that are not compulsory. So these will be valid courses you can do, but there'll be other courses that you can substitute for this. So one example that I am sure about is FinM 8006. It's not a compulsory course. There's an alternative there of ACST 8051, but there are also other courses that you can do instead of that. So this is an example of a degree program that will work, but you don't have to do this. There's some variation around. On the other hand, as you'll see, if you look at the program and courses page, there are some compulsory courses like Stat 6013 and Stat 6014. You have to do those. If you want to do a program of study that's not exactly the same as this, you want to vary some things. If it's a very simple change, you don't need to talk to me necessarily. You can if you want to. If it's a more complicated change, though, if you are going to start to move around some of the, core statistics courses and so on, then it's probably worth sending me an email and just running it by me, just to make sure that you don't run into an unforeseen problem down the track. Like you find that you've missed a prerequisite for a course that you need to do later, and then that course is not offered at both semesters, and you end up with, not being able to finish your degree on time. So if you're going to do very minor changes, then go ahead, just do it, and you can enroll. If you want to do more major changes, it's worth emailing me. Tell me what you want to do, and I can either say yes, that's fine, or I can suggest a study plan that maybe fills out what you want to do or tweaks a few things. Here's the MACCP study plan commencing semester 2. So again, I'm not going to go through this. It's almost the same as the other one. We've got some courses that are only offered in semester 1 or only offered in semester 2. So because of that, things have been moved around a little bit. One thing I do want to mention is that if you're doing the Master of Actuarial Practice, I think all of these courses are offered in both semesters. So what I get a number of students do every year is that they're starting in semester one, but they see this plan and see, oh, I can do all those courses that are all there in semester two. So I'm going to, all there in semester one. So I'm going to follow the commencing semester two plan, even though I've commenced in semester one, or vice versa. They start in semester two and decide they're going to follow the start in semester one plan. If you do that, it does create a problem later on because of the prerequisite requirements. Depending on which semester you start, there's some things that you need to do early. Now, as long as we discover this, within about one semester, we can rearrange. We can rearrange your courses and you'd still be fine. But it doesn't need to be rearranging. If you leave it for a couple of semesters before, you discover this mix-up, then you create a problem for yourself, and you may end up with a semester where you can't do a full load, and then you finish late. Please, there are two plans for commencing semester one and commencing semester two. So please follow the right one. Don't just assume that if I can do all the courses that are listed in one plan, then I can just go ahead and do it and it'll be fine, because that's not always true. If you're not sure, if you think you've got a good reason for following the other plan and you want to do that, then just send me an email and let me check that there's no implications of doing that. Here's the Master Actuarial Studies study plan. So it's just a little bit simpler because you can only start in semester one. So again, we start with Stat 6013 and Stat 6014. There's a fair bit of overlap with the Master Actuarial practice, as you'd expect. There's a little bit less room for finance courses in particular because it's a slightly shorter degree by one semester. All right. One thing I'll mention as I'll go on, it'll come up again as I go on, is if you have some credit or exemption for past studies, then obviously you'll have then some gaps in here. Maybe you don't need to do a course because you've done something similar before. Again, in that case, worth talking to me about what your study plan is going to be. Usually we end up having a email conversation anyway, because at various stages you need to get permission to enroll in courses, and then usually then we make contact by email, and then I can give you advice about your course plan. But even if that doesn't happen, if you've got some exemptions or credits and so you're not going to quite follow the standard plan, just check with me. Like, I'll give you as much freedom as you want as long as you stick within the degree rules, but it's worth checking just because the degree rules are a little bit complicated, and you don't want to make a mistake and end up with a delay further on. I've already really noted these points, but in terms of course planning for those actuarial studies degrees, if you aren't planning to follow one of the standard plans, then contact me, and please do it in plenty of time. Like, it's quite stressful for you and for me if you contact me on Friday of O week and say, I need to follow a different plan. I've got all these issues that come up. By the way, lectures are starting on Monday, so can you do this right away? Because at that, by the end of my week, I've often got a queue of sort of 50 email requests of these things coming in. And so we do work harder at the start of the semester, and we do try to turn these things around. But if you can give us more time, then we can get back to you in plenty of time. Ideally, we're already in, what are we, Monday of our week now. If you ideally, you want to get to me early in O week, or even better, 1, 2, 3 weeks early. Ideally in January, and then that gives plenty of time if there is something complicated that we need to resolve. It means me and the CBE info group can work on it while we're not overwhelmed with other requests from students starting. I talked about the semester of commencement. Just one thing I want to point out, that some compulsory courses are only offered in one semester, and there are also some quite important prerequisite requirements, subjects that are required that you pass before you can go on to the next subject in the sequence. So there's a couple of courses where if you fail the course, which is unfortunate, but it does happen, then or if you fail or you have to withdraw because of whatever reasons, the problem is it may end up being a long delay. We occasionally have a case where students miss one course, like they've withdrawn or haven't completed for whatever reason, and it's only one course, and then they then discover because of that only one course, it delays the whole degree by a full year. Because there's, that leads on to, it's prerequisite for something that leads on to another course. That other course also leads on to another course. Everything is only offered in one semester per year in that set. And then that immediately leads to a long delay. So you end up with, 1 or 2 semesters where you do almost no study, but you graduate a year late. So I'm not saying that to scare you, but if you're concerned about this happening, particularly if there's personal issues or health issues, and you feel like you need to cut your workload, maybe drop out of some of the courses that you're enrolled in, it's worth contacting me for advice about which ones you drop out of, because there are some courses where if you delay it, it only delays you by 1 semester, but there are others where if you delay it, it may delay, or not, or sometimes not at all. Others where if you delay it, it's a really serious delay. So maybe I can help advise you on, if you're going to, cut back on your workload, what are the right things to cut back on so that it doesn't delay your graduation, maybe at all, or not by too much. So, a couple to watch out for, particularly Stat 6013 and Stat 6014. We always do those in the first semester of enrolment, and they're prerequisites. One or both of them is prerequisites for all the other stats courses. And also Stat 6045 is quite an important one as well. I think that's called financial mathematics. Sorry, actuarial techniques. That's quite important because it's the start of a sequence of 3 courses that are prerequisites for each other. So these are ones to just to watch out for. They're sort of important in degree planning. And that's not necessarily all of them, but that's a couple that I see the most often. Careers in the actuarial profession. So actuaries do a whole range of things. Sometimes people do actuarial degrees and don't end up necessarily being actuaries as such. In life and general insurance, actuaries are involved in determining premium scales, designing policies, assessing risks, forming investment policy, determining reserves and financial viability of insurance policies. Superannuation, they may be involved in designing funds. So you can imagine the sorts of things that actuaries that you learn how to do in an actuarial degree are important in designing a super fund. Super funds need to project forward, how many people in their fund are going to retire and at what time and what option they're going to take. And so, modelling to understand that process, and also the uncertainty around how many people retire at different times, you can imagine is extremely important to running a superannuation fund. Also, for a superannuation fund, important to project financial outcomes, project fund solvency, and providing advice and guidance to fund trustees. In investment, analysis of financial transactions, assessing credit risk and other kinds of risks, technical and management roles, or actuarial skills are useful in all of these roles. In data analytics, so this applies also to Master of Statistics, many roles and careers where it's important to use big data to better understand business problems and solutions. And there are many other careers in banking and finance. All right, so we'll now move on to the Statistics Masters program. This is a 2-year degree. Some of the subjects in the degree include our basic courses, so principles of mathematical statistics, regression modelling, statistical inference, and so on. So these are grouped here into methodology courses, so maybe a little bit more of a theory focus, like principles of math stat, statistical inference, and advanced mathematical statistics. All our courses have a bit of a mixture of applied and theoretical, but maybe some of the more applied ones are regression modelling, graphical data analysis, and generalised linear models. Probability and stochastic modelling. So this includes probability theory. So you may have studied some probability already, and if not, you'll do some starting with Stat 60, principles of math stats, Stat 6039. So that'll be more advanced axiomatic probability theory. So really the mathematics of probability spaces, and also stochastic modelling, which is really understanding, for example, random processes that operate in time. Also could be used for processes that operate in space. So these include introduction to stochastic processes and advanced stochastic processes. This sort of theory is important in actuarial studies as well, and you'll do some of those courses in the actuarial degrees too, like introduction to stochastic processes. Again, because you can imagine if you're looking at financial time series, so financial indicators across time, that can be considered a random process embedded in time. So that theory is quite important in that degree as well. Data analytics, so focusing on techniques that are particularly relevant for big data, includes statistical learning, Bayesian data analysis, and big data statistics. Again, there's potential in the final year to do a research essay. There are some entry requirements to that, including a GPA entry requirement. There's also a potential to do a master's thesis. Again, that should be in the final year. There's also a GPA entry requirement for that. That also requires there to be room in the degree to do the thesis, and that may depend on particular circumstances, whether that works for you or not. If you do plan to do a thesis in your degree and you think that affects your degree planning, of course, you can send me an email about it. I have here a study plan. You can see those first two courses look similar to the ones that we started off with in the actuarial degrees. That's Principles of Mathematical Statistics and Regression Modelling. In the Master of Statistics degree, you would do these ones coded as Stat 6038 and Stat 6039. The actuarial master students do quite similar courses that are coded Stat 6014 and Stat 6013. But in the actuarial version, this is a little bit more on actuarial applications and some particular content relevant to actuaries. So you need to do the right one for the right degree. Now you won't be able to make that mistake because that comes through me anyway to approve those courses. But so very similar courses, but a slightly different slant in the actuarial ones. Then I've got a couple of other courses at the start here. Those two in the first semester, that's an econometrics course and a programming course. Those are elective courses, so there's a list of electives that you can take in the Master of Statistics, and those are examples. It's quite common to take, and almost compulsory to take 2 electives in your first semester of the Master of Statistics, because you need to do that Principles of Math Stat and regression modelling before you can go on to any of the other statistics. So what's quite typical is to do those 2 foundational statistics courses in the first semester of enrolment, and then also 2 electives, which there's a range of choices you could make there. And then after that, you can do a more heavy statistics semesters. So you can see that's what it moves on to in the second semester. It is possible to start the Master of Statistics in either semester. I've only got to put up the study plan for semester 1, but on the example study plans website, there are semester 2 plans as well. And again, it's a little bit less sensitive in the Master of Statistics degree than in the Actuarial Master's degree. In the Actuarial Master's degrees, the prerequisite chains are quite tight, so there's a few things to watch out for there. The Statistics degree is a little bit simpler, so that's less of a problem. But still, if you have any uncertainties about whether the courses you plan to take will be right to finish the degree in time, then send me an email and I can advise. So easiest thing is to follow one of the standard programs, but you can do different electives to the examples given here, or if you have any other questions, you can contact me. Careers in statistics are very wide-ranging. I think it's a great thing about statistics is that it's a methodological discipline. It really gives you a very general toolkit. So because of that, you can work in almost any field. You've got something relevant to contribute. So you've got a really general toolkit to work with data in practical terms, like manipulate data, understand data, do computing involving data. And then you've also got a range of theory and methods and software that you will know. And these are applicable to almost any field you can think of that it has any numerical work at all. So I've got some examples there. So in biology, medicine, clinical trials. So that's where there's a formal process for testing new medications that are brought to market for treating human health. There's generally legal requirements that there's some statistical requirements that have to be met in these clinical trials. So statisticians are very embedded in that process. Statistical genetics. So this is not a new area, but a really exploding area because of the kinds of genetic information that can now be worked with and recorded and so on, since the human genome is sequenced and so on. So there's a really big role for statisticians dealing with those big data sets involved in statistical genetics. Cancer research, there's statisticians working in all kinds of medical research, including cancer research. Epidemiology, so there's been plenty of statisticians have prominent media roles and public policy roles during the COVID epidemic. And this includes modelling of disease transmission and disease outbreak, collecting public health data, analysing public health data, and so on. In environment, there's a whole range of roles statisticians can play in environmental sciences, including modelling climate change or modelling weather and climate more generally. In ecology, there's an extremely large role that statisticians play. So, ecology involves a lot of observational data on behaviour of animals. It tends to be quite noisy, messy data, and statisticians are really heavily involved in that process. So there's a lot of ecologists working at ANU. There's a very well-known couple of schools working in ecology, and they're always desperate for statisticians, to work with them and work for them. Because there's an expectation that you'll do challenging, sophisticated statistical methods in analysing ecological data and publishing it. In finance, statisticians are involved in modelling stock prices, modelling volatility, and technology. There are statisticians working on big data type problems for Google, Apple, Yahoo, Netflix, and many others. Statisticians work in sports, in sports analytics, and really any field or industry that involves extracting data and understanding data. Maybe this is not so directly relevant to most of the people listening to this because you're probably already in one of these degrees, but I'll just go through the admission requirements a little bit. So for the 3 master's degrees, the requirement is a bachelor degree with a minimum GPA of 5 or equivalent. So depending on where you've done your undergraduate study, ANU will convert your prior study into an equivalent GPA, or a graduate certificate in finance and actuarial statistics with a GPA of 4.5. Now, in case you're wondering, because if you're in this position, we have waived, at least to some degree, these requirements over the period of COVID, although I think we're returning back to normal now. There's also a requirement that you've done a minimum of 1 course or more of university level maths covering some required topics in calculus and linear algebra. Basically, the content that we expect to be covered is equivalent to the ANU course Math 1113. If you haven't done that, so if your undergraduate degree doesn't involve that much maths or enough maths, then there's an option to meet the requirement by enrolling in the graduate certificate and taking Math 1113 in order to meet the requirement as part of that certificate. Master of Actuarial Studies practice, I'll just mention as well that there's a progress requirement. After your first full-time equivalent year, so that's 48 units of study, you need to have achieved an average of 60% from your courses in that first year in order to progress to the second year. One of the reasons for that requirement is that the second year is more challenging, so that we don't want to set students up to fail. We want students to have done well enough in the first year that they realistically are going to get through the second year. The graduate certificate. So this is often taken as a potential pathway into one of the master's degrees. This allows study of Math 1113 to meet the maths entry requirement for the 3 master's degrees. In this case, it means you have to do the graduate certificate in semester 2 because we only offer a Math 1113 in semester 2. The graduate certificate is a 1 semester full-time program, but it shouldn't delay your master's completion if you go on to a master's, because everything you study in the graduate certificate, provided you choose appropriate courses, can be credited across to the master's degree. If you're doing a graduate certificate in finance and actuarial statistics, and you're doing it with a plan to then go on to a Master of Statistics or one of the actuarial masters, if you haven't contacted me already, you should absolutely contact me because you need me to, or you probably want my advice to make sure that first of all that the courses you're taking will meet the entry requirements. So particularly that you're doing Math 1113 if you need to do Math 1113, and also to make sure that you choose courses that will then all be able to be credited towards your master's degree, and that will enable you to finish your master's degree in the minimum possible amount of time. So hopefully, if you're in that position, you've already talked to me, but if you haven't, then please send me an email. Credits and exemptions. So credit refers to recognition of courses completed in past studies with the units counted towards the completion of the degree. So just to give an example, if we look at the Master of Statistics study plan, let's suppose that you've done a statistics course that maybe is equivalent or nearly equivalent to Principles of Mathematical Statistics, Stat 6039. If you take credit for that course, so you apply for that, there's a, I think I've got a link up for the application, you apply and you're granted credit for it. What that means is you don't have to do that course in the degree. In fact, once you've applied for credit, that means you don't do that course. And your degree is shortened by one course. So the simplest example would be you get credit just for Stat 6039. That then becomes a blank. So you might do 3 courses in your first semester and then continue on with this plan. So you then do your degree, but you do one fewer course and you end up completing. Another option is that instead of taking credit, you take exemption. Exemption also means that we recognise that your prior study is equivalent to one of our courses. So if we go back to that example again, let's suppose that we recognise that some past study you've done is equivalent to Stat 6039, but you decide to take exemption rather than credit. What that means is you don't do Stat 6039, but your degree doesn't get any shorter. So you do a different subject instead, different course instead. So in this case, again, if it's just one course, the simplest thing is probably just substitute something else into that study plan. You might do a different elective course to fill out the degree. Why would you do that? So you think, well, I can make my degree one course shorter. Why wouldn't I take credit and do a bit less work? So I think there's 2 main reasons I can think of why you might want to do that. So one is that you want to learn as many statistical topics as you can. Now, it's not possible to fit all the statistics courses we offer into the Master of Statistics. So you're already making some choices, which topics are the most important to you. So if you want to do everything that's available, you want to do advanced stochastic processing, big data statistics, advanced statistical learning, and so on, and survival models and time series models, you're not going to be able to fit everything in your degree. So if you take exemption rather than credit, what that means is, well, you've got another subject to play with, so you can do an extra course, learn another topic. So that's one reason, is that you just want to learn some more statistics. So that will allow you to fit in another course. Second reason might be that you want to do a master's thesis or a research essay. Then you might find that you can't fit a thesis or an essay into your program unless you take exemption for something, particularly if you want to do a large thesis. So the thesis is up to, how big is the maximum size? I think 24 units is the maximum size that you can take for a master's thesis. If you want to do a 24-unit master's thesis, which is the big one, you can't do that unless you have some exemptions. There's not enough room in the degree. But if you decide you really want to do that, like you're interested in research, maybe you're planning to go on to do more higher degree research later, then you might take exemption in order to make room in your degree to fit in a thesis. So those are possible reasons why you might take exemption rather than credit. There's no maximum of how much exemption you can take, but there is a maximum of how much credit you can take. So the maximum is 24 units, which is 4 standard courses. So that's 1 semester full time. So no matter how much prior study you've done, you can't shorten your degree by more than 1 semester. For the extra ones, if you've got more courses that are similar, you could take the others as exemptions. So then you'd make your degree 1 semester shorter, and then you'd also have some room to do some other extra courses in there as well. That's actually a legislative limit. We're not allowed. So I think the idea is to prevent you doing a certain amount of study and then getting degree after degree after degree, all mostly due to the first degree that you did. So a new degree has got to be mostly new study. That's kind of the principle there. So because of that, you can only get 24 units of credit. So there's a link there to apply. Do I say this on the next slide? Oh, yes, I do. Okay. If you're applying for credit or exemption based on non-ANU study, then we may require you to provide your transcripts, so that should be straightforward. What's less straightforward is we may require you to provide the outline, the course outline of your prior study, and that would normally be required to be university stamped from the university issuing it. And if it's not in English, then we would need to get a certified translation as well. If you get stuck on some of these requirements, please send me an email and we'll see what if we can give you some advice or help you with that. All right, so that's that. The last point is make sure that you're sure before you apply for credit or exemption. If you want to ask informally something about credit or exemption, you can send me an email. But if you actually apply formally and then are granted credit or exemption, normally these are only reversed under exceptional circumstances. So if you apply for credit and get given credit, but then decide, actually, I wanted to do a master's thesis, so I want more room, so I actually want those only to be exemptions, then this can only be reversed under exceptional circumstances. So if you're in this position, send us an email and tell us your situation, but better to think seriously first and make sure you really do want it as credit or exemption. You do have the option that you could maybe check first that you're eligible to get the credit or exemption, but delay the formal application until you're sure that that's what you want to do. So that's also an option. But any of these things, you can send me an email and we can discuss it. So what else do I want to say? Another issue with taking credit or exemption, so normally we will protect you from this and stop this from happening. But if you need a course in order to meet one of the institute exemption requirements, this is the Actuarial Institute exemption requirements, and you get credit or exemption for it, that may then affect whether you can get that qualification or not. So I've got an example. So if you've done, maybe you've gone to an accredited university for your bachelor's degree, like maybe Monash, you've done some SATS courses there that are associated with getting institute exemptions, but maybe your mark wasn't quite high enough from that prior study to get the institute exemption. If you apply for credit at ANU based on your Monash course, if we decide those courses are similar enough, we will give you the credit so that you don't have to do the ANU course. But then the problem is you won't get the Actuarial Institute exemption because your Monash grade wasn't high enough. So for that reason, you might be able to take credit for your prior Monash course, but you decide not to because you think, well, I'm going to do that again at ANU. So this time I'll get a higher grade and maybe get my institute exemption. So you might want to do that. So just be aware of that. All right. Now, normally, if you're on one of the actuarial degrees and you request credit or exemption, normally I would remind you, or somebody would remind you that this is an issue. But I might forget to do that. There might be somebody else acting in my role, and they don't do that. So it's really your responsibility to manage these things. So please think through if it has any implications on your Actuarial Institute exemptions before you apply for an ANU credit or exemption. So I say here about the actuarial masters, there are some complications. Well, really the only other complication is that if you've done study at a different university that maybe is similar to our courses, but it wasn't an accredited university, and it's a course that's related to institute accreditation, we won't let you take that credit. So that's a policy that we've decided to apply, that we won't let you give up. One of the main reasons students often do these degrees is to try to get some institute exemptions. And so as part of our process of accrediting our degrees with the institute, we won't let you opt out of courses that are associated with institute exemption. Unless you've done a study at another institution that is accredited with the Actuaries Institute. So because of that, you may find that you've done courses that look quite similar to some of the ANU courses, but if it wasn't at a university that's accredited with the Actuaries Institute, we will not necessarily give you those credits anyway. So that's a policy decision that we've made. Another thing to mention is that there are multiple lists of courses for the Master of Statistics, the MStat, and also for the Master of Actuarial Practice. So there's basically for those 2 degrees, there's first list is compulsory courses, second list is, I guess, medium priority courses. So you have to do a certain number of those, not all of them, but a minimum number of them. And then the third list is what we might call elective courses. Again, as a policy decision, we've decided we won't give credit for courses on that third list. Now, there is no third list for the Master of Actuarial Studies, but for the other 2 degrees, there is. So we won't give you credits for those. So if you've done a computer science degree, we won't give you credit for computing courses. I should mention as well that the credits exemptions are evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So the assessment process can be complex, and we don't always grant credits that are applied for, even if the course titles are similar. There could be a few reasons for that. It could be that the course titles are similar, but there's a few key topics that weren't covered in your prior study that are covered in the ANU course. Sometimes that's because we have some, particular areas of strength that we teach in our courses that maybe are specialties for us. Maybe other universities aren't as likely to cover those. So in some cases, you might think this is quite a similar course, but we might decide you're not covering some topics that that are an important part of those courses, so we won't always give you the credit. So don't assume that you'll get the credit. So don't go ahead and make plans on the basis that I'm definitely going to get these credits. My degree will be shorter, or I can do things that I can do whatever. It's not guaranteed until we've approved it. So we try to be fair and so on, but you don't necessarily know what we're looking for, so don't assume that you'll get the credits in advance. Also, because there is a bit of a process to go through, and in some cases we might ask you to go back and get extra documents from your previous university. Apply in plenty of time. So if you apply halfway through O-Week, and then we come back and say, well, you need to go back to your university in another country, get them to give you a detailed course outline of the course that you did with a university stamp on it. And then after that, you need to then get a certified translation and do that as well before we'll assess it. And then we'll take, at least a few days and maybe a week or occasionally longer to assess it. Well, that's not going to work, because, if you do that only a few days before the start of semester, of course, there's not going to be time to do all those steps. So if you are applying for credits or exemptions, please apply early. If you're not sure whether you need to apply early or not, you can send me an email and we can discuss it. Course choices. So I've talked about the programs and courses pages. I do have links for those later on. So the degree rules are there. They're not the most exciting page necessarily, but it really is worth having a look at it. That's really the official source of information for what you need to do to finish your degree. Whenever I get a question about whether this course plan will work or something else, first thing I do is go to the programs and courses page myself. So this is a page that you really should look at. You can, it'll have the lists of courses and the number of each type of course that you need to do. There'll be clickable links for each of those courses, and you can then go into the P&C page for each of the individual courses. Those pages will show you the semesters that they're offered and more detail about what's the content of those courses and so on. So there's really very complete information that's there. Course choices are limited to those on the programs and courses pages. So I've talked a little bit about electives in the degrees. When I talk about electives, I'm talking about the courses in the last list of courses on each of those pages. I don't mean an elective means that you can do any course from anywhere in ANU as your elective. So these are specialised degrees. We do. It's not a Master of Science or a Master of Studies that's a broad-ranging general purpose degree. They're statistics degrees or actuarial studies or actuarial practice degrees. So we do constrain what you can work on. So you're not going to be able to fill up your degree with 4 philosophy courses as your electives or whatever. They're not that kind of degree. There are other degrees that you can do if you want something a bit more, wide-ranging in general. So those course choices are limited, and we don't make exceptions to that rule. Again, if if you're not sure, send me an email, but basically we don't make exceptions. Now, the only time we do make an exception is occasionally, and it's pretty occasional, students who've done their bachelor's degree at ANU have done so many of the actuarial statistics programs that they can there's no longer enough courses on the list for them to fill up their whole master's degree. Now, in that case, we'll come up with something else. But that, even for students who've done their undergraduate here, that doesn't happen very often. Oh, and the other exception is that we have a course called ACST 8051, which we do make available as an elective to the actuarial master students. You need to have completed, there's a prerequisite there, so either STAT 3038 or STAT 6045. And that course is being taught at the moment on modern approaches to actuarial practice in general insurance. So that's a course that you can do, and it's in those example study plans I put up earlier, and you would do it in place of one of the other electives. Most of ANU's teaching is done in semester 1 and semester 2. Semester 1 is the one that starts next week. Semester 2 starts later in the year. We do have other semesters as well. We have a summer semester and a winter semester. We might have a spring and autumn semester, I can't remember, where there are some courses that are taught in a more compressed time frame. Some of the courses in these degrees, particularly the statistics courses, some of them are offered by ANU in the summer session or in other semesters other than semester 1 and semester 2. However, those versions of the courses are for specific purposes for other degrees. And so if you're doing any of the degrees we're talking about today, you're not eligible to enroll in those off sessions. So again, sometimes students want to do that. They want to accelerate through the degree by maybe catch up on a course in the summer session, but that's not an option for the master's degrees that I'm talking about. That we're reserving those courses. We teach them in a different way with a slightly different emphasis aimed at some of the other degrees. So we don't offer them in any circumstances to students doing the MSTAT and the MACTP and the MACTS. So just to be aware of, and this is also on the programs and courses page for those courses. So you might see, for instance, STAT 6039 that you'll see offered in semester 1, semester 2, summer session. But then if you look at that programs and courses page, somewhere on the overview information, it will say courses outside semester 1 and semester 2 are only offered to students doing, I think it's the Master of Applied Data Analytics. I just mentioned as well, so you're probably more aware of this than probably more, as much up to date as this as I am, but in semester 1 this year, lectures and tutorials will be generally offered face-to-face. Also, we'll be recording lectures and making them available. Some courses they'll be live streamed and some they won't. It's up to the individual lecturer. At least in subjects run by RSFAS, this school, both online and pre-recorded video tutorials will be offered. Our advice is that you attend face-to-face if you can, that we think if you come to the lectures in person and the tutorials in person, that you get the best educational outcome, that you will, it'll help encourage you to keep a good routine, you'll get a bit more communication to and fro with the lecturer, and so we think this is the best way to learn. But the option is still there to do it remotely if you need to. So if you're not able to come to Australia or able to come to Canberra at the moment, or for whatever reason you can't or choose not to come to the face-to-face versions. Also in this semester, all assessment will be online and will be able to be done remotely, including exams. So that's for semester 1. We don't know yet what the arrangements are going to be for semester 2 this year and also after that. So before COVID, mid-semester and final exams probably always, maybe an occasional exception, but we're always in person in an exam hall in Canberra. And so that may be the case again from semester 2 onwards. So again, if you're watching this recording and you're not in Australia or you're not in Canberra, you can still do everything remotely this semester. If you could be here in person, that would be even better, but you can do everything remotely, including the exams. But don't assume that will be the case in semester 2. So it could be that we'll go back to more Canberra-based stuff, particularly for exams in semester 2. In which case, if that happens, you would need to be in Canberra. But we don't know yet what the approach is going to be in semester 2. I just want to mention as well that lecturer and tutor consultations are currently online. Again, we don't know what will happen in semester 2. Maybe they'll still be online. Maybe they'll go back to what they used to be, which was face-to-face in the lecture, usually in the lecturer's office. Lecturers and tutors have a window available of about 2 hours every week, or at least 2 hours every week for each course. And generally, these consultations are underutilised. So lots of lecturers will find, at least for some parts of the semester, that they're available for 2 hours and maybe very few students come or no students come. At other times of semesters, maybe leading up to the exam or the mid-semester, sometimes there's a bit of a rush, but often they're underutilised. So if you're, if you're finding you need extra help with your courses, that's I think a really useful resource that you should take advantage of. So you can basically get one-on-one mentoring or tutoring from your lecturer, and also from the tutor, and you can do both if you want to, every week. For potentially an hour, up to 2 hours. Now that's shared with everyone in the class, except that if other people aren't using it, then you can use it. So I've had students come to me and say, well, I'm thinking about, I'm worried about the subject. I think I need extra help. Can you suggest a tutor that I can pay privately to give me extra tutoring on this? And my first response is, well, are you going to the lecturer consultation and the tutor consultation? Because rather than pay somebody from outside to give you that tutoring, instead, why wouldn't you for free talk to, or not for free, but included in your fees, why wouldn't you talk to the lecturer who's going to be the one setting the exam, who's written the slides and so on? And and I think usually we're pretty approachable. I think please, if you're finding subjects difficult, take advantage of those things. Like, don't be embarrassed that I don't feel like I understand this, so I don't want to talk to the lecturer because then I'll be embarrassed. I think that's what we're here for. So please, we like students to talk to us. So now just go through some sources of information. So I've really talked about these already, but some key pieces of information are the programs and courses pages for the degrees. So I've got the links there. I haven't put the link up for the graduate certificate, but that's easy to find as well. So that's got the rules, basically the rules that you need, describing what you need to graduate from your degree. The example study plans are also useful. So I think I put up a link to those earlier. They're also accessible from the programs and courses pages. So you go to one of those pages and there'll be a tab for first year advice. And then underneath that, there'll be a link to example study plans. So you can go to those and then look at the study plans. Also worth looking at the programs and courses pages for courses that you're considering enrolling in or have enrolled in. So there's an example there, but there's one of those for any course that you'll want to do. So that's got more detailed information about the courses. The class summary is another very useful document once you're enrolled in a course in particular. So usually, maybe you look at this once you're already enrolled or you've decided to enroll. These will be provided to you by the lecturer, maybe on the Wattle page, which is the online page for the subject. Also, there's a link available to them from the programs and courses page. These have got a bit more detailed information about how the course is being run in the current semester. And so these include information on assessment, so the percentages of different kinds of assessment, the dates that things are due, and so on. And usually a schedule of what topics are covered in each week. So this is really the most important document. If you're enrolled in a course, this is the document that really tells you what you need to do. What's the course about? What do I need to hand in? How much is it going to be worth? When do I need to hand it in? Occasionally, there will be a variation that the lecturer makes from the class summary, and that would be announced then on Wattle. So you should receive some sort of notification if that happens. But basically, the class summary is the document that really describes how the subject is going to run. So these are things you really want to look at, when you're enrolled in a course. So that way you shouldn't be able to forget that you've got an assignment due or whatever. So you don't need to rely on the lecturer reminding you you've got an assignment due. That should all be up there on the has to all be up there on the class summary. Some context of people to talk to if you've got issues. So I'm the convener of the of the various degrees, of those various degrees. So if you've got questions about the degrees in general, about your course plan, etc., please make use of the programs and courses pages. If you have some idea what you want to do, or maybe even solve everything yourself firsthand, I think that's a good way to go. Even if you're going to talk to me, it's good to look at those pages first, and then have a fair idea what your options and limitations are, and then we can have a more informed discussion. Also, you can contact me about course planning at the start of your degree, or if you have specific complex course planning issues. Now, you're welcome to try to figure these things out yourself from the programs and courses page, but if there's anything that you think is unclear or you're not sure about, feel free to contact me. If you have questions, particularly about Actuaries Institute exemptions, then the right person is Adam Butt, who's the Actuarial Studies Discipline Lead. CBE info for, I guess, degree-related administration. That's their email there. Also, the school office, so Research School of Finance and Applied Statistics, their address is there as well. Okay, and the only other thing I was going to mention is usually I prefer to be communicated with by email. And the reason I've got for that is that often I'll give you advice saying you can do these courses and this will work. You want to do this in this order? Yes, I confirm, I agree. Or this sort of thing. And then in that case, I think it's good for both you and for me if there's a record of that. Because then maybe 2 years' time when you come to graduate and there's a question about why have you done this course, well, you've got a record and also ANU have got a record and we can disentangle it. Whereas if we have a verbal conversation about it, but there's no, no easy to find documentation, then maybe somebody else is in my role in a couple of years' time, or who knows, and then it's hard to find those things. So I think it's good to have email communication. Now, I'm not saying I'll never talk to you in person, but if it's particularly degree planning, which is usually most of the contact that you'll have with me is probably about course planning, then I find that's better done by email. And then I find I can, because it gets quite complicated, and I feel like if we can logically lay it out in an email, and then we get it all right. Otherwise, you talk about it verbally, and because it's complicated, we can both go away having different understanding of what we agreed to. So email is really good for that. But if there's a reason, of course, we can talk in person as well. And I may meet, or probably will meet some of you through courses that I'll actually that you take through your degree. All right, so that's all I've got to talk about. So sorry I went so late after the long technical problems. So we've got plenty of time if you want to ask me questions, or you can always email me later. I'll just check if anybody's posted a question online. No, I've got nobody online, so that makes it simpler. So let it rip if you've got anything you want to ask. Now, I hope I haven't overloaded you with too much information and jargon about the programs and courses and class summaries and other bits and pieces. But you go online and explore these things a bit. Pretty much everything links to everything else. So I think when you go online, you'll find it's it's reasonably clear to work out what's going on, like what are the what do you need to do for the degree, and what are the courses that you can do. All right. Well, no one looks like they're bursting with a question, so I might stop the recording. Right. So thank you for listening.